Hello again. In this short video, I'm going to show how to glue up an Alaia blank, a Paulownia Alaia blank, properly. I just received an order for a blank, followed by a phone call from another customer asking about some tips to glue these things up. So I thought I'd go ahead and turn the camera on and just document what I'm doing. So I have 3 of our premium Paulownia planks that I've pulled off the pile. And the first thing that I'm going to do is you want to spend the most time deciding how you're going to fit the boards together. You don't want to just glue them together the first way that they go down, and you don't want to glue them together the way the grain looks best on the top, although that would be a consideration. What you really want to do is just throw your boards on here and start flipping them around until you find the way they fit the best. Okay, so kind of liking that a little bit. I have a couple little chips here on this board, but I can cut those off. What I'm doing is I'm looking for flaws in the board. Got a slight little crack here, so maybe that might be better if that crack was on the outside, so that when I shape the board, that will get cut off. I think I do want to do that, so let's throw that one out here. Not fitting so good right here, but I can fix that. And otherwise that looks good. Now the next thing I'm going to do, and this is pretty important, I don't know if the camera can see it, so now I'm going to look for growth rings. And I can see in this middle board, the growth rings are curved this way, so the outside of the tree was out here. So I'm going to call that down. So these two, I want those to be up so that they alternate. And these boards were also cut with a circular saw, so you have to be careful you're not looking at the saw blade marks. You want to look at the tree growth marks. And unfortunately, I can't really see. I can see this one well, but these two I can't see well. So I'm going to look at the other side, see if I can make sure that those are up. And it's not. This one is also down. This is down. So all 3 of these boards right now have the growth rings down, so I can't glue them together that way. And the reason why is, if these boards were to ever want to cup, I don't want them all to cup the same way and have a U-shaped surfboard. So if you alternate the growth rings, if and when these do decide to move a little bit and cup, they will work against each other. They will cup, but the board overall will appear flatter. So that's what I'm going for. So I know these are all pointing down. All right, just double check. Down, down. I know this one's down. So I'm gonna flip this over so that now see that now that crack is where I don't want it. And see, this is the important part of gluing these up, is just gluing them up the best way. So now that crack's in, but these are both up, so let's flip this over here and put this one over here. This is really, and those fit a little nicer too, so we're looking good there. And now we've got my little cracks outboard here, so that'll get cut off. This is down. This one's up, and this one's up. So now I have the growth rings up, down, up. Perfect. And my little flaw is going to be cut off when we make this a surfboard. So I'm liking the way that's going together. I'm going to go run and get something to mark this. So since I'm going to true up these edges, I'm going to shuffle this. I don't want to lose my positioning. So the easiest way to do this is just to make a big V on your boards. As I've done often in these videos, I'm using a Sharpie just so that you can see the marks in the video, know what I'm talking about. But really a pencil would be better, because a Sharpie, the ink can wick into the wood just a little bit. So, but that's what you want to do. Make those marks. Now I can shuffle them around, move them, go work on them. I can always put this little V shape back together and know that that's the way they're supposed to be. The next thing to do would be straighten out these edges so they join better. Right now this isn't terrible, I could almost get away with just gluing these the way they are and just clamping this out. See, I can get that just with my own hand pressure, so I know I can get it with a clamp. But I'm not going to do that because it will be a much better glue joint if I can dry fit these better without a lot of clamping pressure, so that more glue stays in and it's a better fit. The way I like to trim these is on my table saw. Some people use a joiner, a hand plane. You know, everybody's got different tools that they can use. I like to use the table saw. So I'm going to move the camera over to the table saw and we'll trim these up. Okay, so now I'm back at my table saw and I've got my 3 Paulownia boards sitting here against the wall, oriented the way they're going to get glued together. But we'll just start with this one. So this edge right here is what I want to make more perfect so that it joins to this board. This little Mini-Max table saw that I have, it's a combination machine. I have a joiner on it that works quite well, but not so well on really long pieces. This is not a very long joiner. So if you have a really long joiner, big one, great. For me, I found it's a little easier with my table saw, and I know a lot of you don't have a joiner and you do have a table saw, so that's what I'm going to show. These boards are just a little under 6 inches wide. I'm going to set my fence to just a little less than that. I've also taken the time to ensure that the angle of my blade is not tilted in any way. It's a nice perfect 90 degrees from the surface of my table saw, because that's what's going to get me the good edge. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this board. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sight down it here to see which way this is bowed, if there is any bow. And it's not very much, but I can see that this board is bowed this way. So even though this is not the edge I'm going to glue to the next board, this is the edge I'm going to trim first, because the table saw, as it goes through this fence that is flat, it will have a tendency to take a little bit of the high spot off of the top. So you always want to run it through your table saw with the high side against the blade, the cupped side against the fence, and it will take a little bit of the high spot off. Once that's a little straighter, I can flip the board over, run it through against the fence. So my side, my edge that is going to get glued here will also be better. I'm going to do the same thing to the other boards, and it works very much like a joiner. It does a really great job when you do that. Okay, so again, here's my high spot. I've set the blade to a little under 6 inches. Off we go. Okay, it already looks better. Now I'm going to move the fence over just a squeak, so it takes a little more on the other side. The key is not bobbling. You notice that when I went through, I was very careful to be very smooth, even when I had to change position of my hands, keep the board against the fence, very smooth. If you do bobble, don't worry about it. Move the fence over a tad more, do it again. You want your cut to be nice and smooth all the way through. Once you're comfortable you've done that, you can try to fit it to the other board. So we go ahead and do that to these boards as well. Okay, now here's another thing. So this middle board has a couple little tiny chips here that I don't want to be in my surfboard. So on this one, I'm going to take a little more on the first cut just to get rid of those. So again, I'm just under 6 inches. Since this was moved over twice, this is pretty good. Sight down, find the high spot, which is this side, the side with the chips on it, so that's good. Move it over. Flip the board over. On the first cut, the chips didn't get cut off. Move it over a little more. This will be the 3rd time it's been flipped. So that's good. It's just getting straighter every time. I finally got the chips. Big bow on this one. This one's going towards the blade. Okay, we'll go see how these fit. Okay. Beautiful. These two are perfect. Just zero clamping pressure, and they're nice and tight. This one a little bow, so I'm going to work on this one just a little bit more and come back out and keep checking. And I'll do that until on the table side, get that to work. Okay, right after I walked away and said I was going to work on this on the table saw a little more, I was going to do that off camera. Just real quickly, just for the fun of it, I did this. This is a board I have kissed on the table saw, and it's still up. I don't have any cracks here, and that fit beautifully. So I'm going to abandon that mark, and let's just, that's what we're going to do. The main thing about gluing up an Alaia blank is you want to spend a lot of time choosing the orientation. That's actually the hardest part, and making sure that your edges are nice and smooth. So now you just need to get some glue and some clamps and glue it up. And by the way, the reason why I'm running outside the barn here, I'm found a place in my property where I don't care how much glue hits the ground. And you're going to want to make sure that you have a lot of good glue squeeze out, so it's going to be a little messy. If you don't have a spot on your shop that it's okay to get glue on, put some paper down and some plastic. So I've got this all set up. But once I have glue on these edges, these are going to drop down in like that. And I want to glue both edges quite well. It's what I like to do. I like to just rub it on with my fingers. Some people use a roller or whatever. I like to use my finger so that this little bump underneath my finger allows for spread. It'll spread the glue, but there'll still be a little ridge right down the middle. Okay, now on this coat of glue, I made sure I got all the surfaces. I'm gonna let the Paulownia wick in a little bit of that glue, and I'm gonna come back and just before I glue it up, I'm gonna put a little more on after the Paulownia has had a chance to soak some up. I can already see on this one, it looks like there's less glue than when I first walked away from it. The wood's drinking it up, which is what you want. This is going to be glued down for a little bit, so I got to kind of hurry. This is where, again, it gets a little messy. Find a good spot. Right back over that first board with a little bit more of a bead. Same order. This time I'm holding my finger in such a way that it stays on thick. Nice thick layer. If you have too much glue, it's just going to squeeze out. No problem. If you don't have enough glue, that's a problem that you can't really fix. You find some dry spots, just go ahead and make sure there's a lot of glue everywhere. Okay, now I'm going to drop everything in. Now you have to work kind of quickly because the glue in any of the open spots is draining straight down right now. Glue is squeezing out beautifully. That clamp up, this clamp down. You want to alternate them. Also, I'm not putting one on the outboard side yet because it's going to be easier for me to even up these, so I can still move these around. That's perfect right there. This one needs to come up. So I can just, regardless of what's happening here, I'll make this right. Little clamping pressure there. Next clamp back up again. everything out. Okay, now I don't have a whole lot of pressure on these clamps, and it's looking really good for squeeze out. So I also want to check that I'm not gluing the board up in a twisted position. I'm going to do that last, actually. Right now what I want to do is I want to see the other side. To make sure that it has full squeeze out everywhere, and it does, because I used a liberal amount of glue. It's a little messy right now, but this is fully glued. Now, something else, these black bar clamps, if you allow the bar clamps to touch the glue joint and let it dry overnight, a lot of times, well, almost every time, what will happen is the glue somehow makes some sort of corrosion reaction with the pipe, and you get a black mark on the wood. I'm going to scrape all this glue off later when it's dry and send this through a sander, so it probably wouldn't be a problem. But just in case, I'm going to loosen just this one clamp, being careful that the wood doesn't shift, and slightly lift it off the wood. Clamp it back up again. Just that short amount of time, this glue already starts to tack up, so you can usually get away with loosening a clamp, adjust it a little bit, and clamp it back, and nothing will move, especially in the middle. So I'll go ahead and do the middle first. Do the same thing to this one. Loosen it, drop it down, making sure that these are still where I want them to be. Nice. Same thing here. Okay, these ones on the end, I wouldn't doubt it if these do move a little bit. If I wanted to, maybe I could put a couple of little spring clamps in here to make sure that they don't. But I'm just going to go for it, and if it moves, I'll push it back. As it so happens, the glue tacked up well enough that it didn't move at all. Same thing here. Nice. Okay. So this is ready to sit overnight, as long as it's flat. Let me check that out. A few different angles. Looking good. I can just let it glue overnight and scrape all this glue off. What I'll probably do is, just to save myself a little work, probably about a half an hour or something, I'll come out here when this just kind of gummy. You can scrape it with a putty knife and save yourself a little time tomorrow. If you straighten these boards with a joiner makes a very smooth surface, and a very smooth surface isn't the best glue joint. It's better if you use your table saw. You have those little table saw blade marks, leave them on. That slight roughness is what really makes the glue hold. You did use a joiner to make them all perfect and straight, and they're super smooth. Come back with some coarse sandpaper, so like 60 grit, and scuff it up a little bit so the glue has something to grab. But if you do that, make sure and blow all the dust off really well. because dust is bad, and that's how you glue up an Alaia blank. From here you can go right to shaping, or you can try to make it flat first. That's what I do for some of my customers. Send them through a sander just so they have a better head start, but you don't really need to do that. After this is dry, you can just start making a surfboard out of it. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video.